Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, fourth and trollers, welcome back to the most entertaining fantasy football podcast on the planet. My name is Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And this is Fourth and Troll. We're back at you here with a great Friday episode. We're going to do some previewing of week 4. We'll talk about the first game of week 4 from Thursday night football. But first things first, Wes, how's it going?
I had a full stat list of the last time the Dolphins were 4-0, and I cannot share any of that because we did not continue our undefeated streak. So I'm doing okay. I'm bummed. A lot happened. How are you, Noah?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's, I think it's it's tough. We saw, 28 minutes of football from our main Miami Dolphins squad, and then dealt with some pretty scary stuff on that football field in Cincinnati, Paul Brown Stadium. All in all, doing all right. Still feeling some of the effects from seeing QB1 on the turf there, but doing all right. We have got a great show for you today. We're going to start out talking about that Thursday night football matchup, the Miami Dolphins at the Cincinnati Bengals. Then we'll jump into some starts and sits for some uncertain guys this week, and then close it out with the fan favorite, studs and duds, baby. It's going to be studs and duds for week 4, but as always, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the news, the need to know information as you are setting your lineups for week 4 and beyond here in fantasy football land. Wes, what's going on in the NFL right now?
Well, speaking of Thursday night, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Tua Tagovailoa, and his head trauma and neck injury. For those of you that watched last night's game, that was one of the most terrifying injuries I've ever seen. It hurts even more being a fan of that football team, but positive news from that post the game. He has movement in all of his extremities. He was taken off the field via a stretcher, but then he was discharged, I think, minutes before the game even ended, and he had a chance to fly home with the team that night. So there's already some speculation that Noah and I have talked about, thinking like this may be a season-ending injury. Who knows? But as of right now, signs are already improving for Toolman 1. So we'll see. We'll find out, I'm sure, the next day or so how his status is. In New York, Sterling Shepard, as we remember from Monday night, it is confirmed, tore his left ACL, out for the season. And there is a little going on in the Giants passing game without Sterling Shepard. Kenny Galladay is about ready to be cut. And Kadarius Toney has been injured since like 2007. It feels like, he's never been healthy. Yeah. Rough impact for the Giants offense. Also in New York, back from injury, Zach Wilson will officially be starting against the Steelers. We'll see if
don't care.
I was about to say, I was trying to make it unbiased, but we'll see how this affects the breakout right now of Garrett Wilson.
This is I don't even care about being biased or unbiased. I feel like I don't know. There's a lot of people that think Zach Wilson's going to break out. I have yet to see anything from him besides 2 passes in his game against the Tennessee Titans last year, which, oh my gosh, what a great secondary. Anything that Zach Wilson has done to lead me to believe that he is going to be successful or be good in this league. He's, I don't think sell Garrett Wilson, and if anyone's trying to buy your Jets running backs, get rid of them. It's downhill from here. Flacco was an upgrade.
Probably, as far as fantasy production goes. Shifting a little westward into the Detroit area, Dan Campbell is, quote, preparing to be without DeAndre Swift. So for you, prepare yourself to be without DeAndre Swift and consider Jamal Williams, I would say, a locked-in RB2. Because this Seahawks defense has allowed the second most rushing yards this season. Good news for those of you that went ahead and snagged Jamal Williams, or if you already had him, wonderful for you. Also in that same division, Dalvin Cook and David Montgomery are still considered day-to-day. So Alexander Madison and Khalil Herbert are not yet ready to be starting worthy, I would say.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's possible if both of them, if Cook and Montgomery and or miss time, I think the backup is ready to start.
I think Dalvin has the better outlook for this week. He was a full participant in practice on Thursday.
Yeah.
Even just after, quote, just dislocating his shoulder.
I know, this dude.
Just dislocating it. He played through that shoulder injury last year, or through a shoulder injury. I'm not sure if it's the same shoulder or same injury, but I think you should be ready for Dalvin Cook on Sunday morning in London.
Oi, bruv. Oi, governor. Oi, London.
That boy Dalvin, he's about to be going off at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Yeah. Get ready for Dalvin Cook. I think prepare for Dalvin Cook. I think as of right now, prepare for David Montgomery to be not playing. But Dalvin Cook should be playing.
Cook should play. Montgomery may not play.
I may have taken that opportunity just to do a British accent just for the show again, because
I think we need to take advantage. We'll talk about Drake London every week that we can. Speaking of not being able to play, Christian McCaffrey. Here we go. This is what all you CMC owners feared. Missed Wednesdays and Thursdays.
I choked on my water laughing. No,
oh, nice. I thought it was a dog, and I was like, who was that? Christian McCaffrey missed Wednesdays and Thursdays practice with a thigh injury. This is not just a leak, as Christian McCaffrey joked about. No. He didn't take a leak. He's actually injured. Either way,
he's hurt.
If this is for real, Chuba Hubbard, or as I like to call him, Chuba Hubbard, next in line in the depth chart. Although who's the third string that we like a lot, Noah?
Third string is Deontay Foreman. However, Hubbard has been getting the work behind McCaffrey when McCaffrey has gone off the field. So Hubbard would be in line. I will say, though, I refuse to believe that there isn't a better option on any waiver wire than you would get, going to pick up Chuba Hubbard and playing him over McCaffrey this week. Without McCaffrey's been playing in this delusional offense.
Oh yeah,
Hubbard is not going to be any better. I think maybe you're looking at. I don't know. Maybe Madison gets some work. Honestly, I'd be quicker to play Alexander Madison, even if Cook is playing, than I would Chuba Hubbard.
Well, let's wait and see what happens, because we're 1 for 1 on rants. Noah, you called out Arthur Smith and the Falcons, and then Kyle Pitts got some productivity. You just called out Matt Rule, so we'll see what happens if that trend goes. Let's fly through a couple more injuries here. Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay said Julio Jones could have played in week 3, where they chose to sit him out as a precaution. So expect him to suit up and help get that Bucs passing game finally going. On the flip side, though, Chris Godwin has had some slow practices and seems unlikely to play. Michael Gallup logged a full practice and is, quote, hopeful to play against the Commanders this weekend. Amon-Ra St. Brown played through an ankle injury last week, but missed Wednesdays and Thursdays practice due to that. He could miss this week, but it's still uncertain until sometime, maybe tomorrow on Saturday, when they'll decide if that's for certain. And last but not least, Keenan Allen was a limited participant for Wednesday's practice and has a shot to play against the Texans, while Justin Herbert will likely just continue to be limited for several weeks, and he will probably just be playing through broken rib cartilage for the rest of the season. So just expect that questionable tag to just stay there next to his name. That is it for the NFL news. Heading into week 4 with that, let's discuss how these boys did in fantasy on Thursday night. Dolphins at Bengals, whiteout game for Cincinnati. Noah, let's talk about our must starts, risky starts, and our don't starts.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, it was one. I just want to say real quick, those whiteout uniforms, pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. Not gonna lie.
Cool.
I wish they had a little more. I wish Joe Burrow had a few more grass stains on his jersey.
Yeah.
Dolphins only got 1 sack. This guy's offensive line who had allowed 15 sacks for the first 3 games. Was hoping the Dolphins would pressure him a little bit more, but no, pretty clean white jersey by the end of that game. Yeah. So that is all good. But Wes, must starts. We nailed it, dude.
Crushed it.
We crushed it. Knocked
Top
out of the park.
2 fantasy performance of Thursday night.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill with 25.9 fantasy points. on 14 targets, 14 targets, 10 catches for 160 yards. He did have one carry that went for a -1 yard. So just barely missed that 26-point mark with that carry. But Tyreek Hill looked awesome even after Tua went out of the game. Teddy Bridgewater hit him on a deep ball, which he came up just short of the end zone with. And then Dolphins didn't manage to score a touchdown there. They got a field goal instead. But I think Tyreek Hill, even with the loss of Tua for maybe a few games, maybe the season, whatever it's going to be, I think he's still in a spot where he's going to be, good to lock in your lineup. So I'm not worried about Tyreek Hill.
I agree. After
what has happened with Tua, which maybe, a lot lesser of a situation than we thought it was, hearing that he was able to be discharged from the medical center and was going to be able to travel back with the team after the game was a fantastic, really fantastic news and a plus in the right direction. But we're going to have to wait and see kind of what the implications of everything are, how severe things turned out. Let's move on here to my must start. And this must start felt a little sweeter today.
Tell us why, Noah.
It was a roller coaster of emotions because this T. Higgins, 25.4 fantasy points, 9 targets, 7 catches, 124 yards and a touchdown, had a 59-yard touchdown on Xavier Howard. In the moment, I felt like zero excitement, even though, he was a must start. It happened just after, Tua had just gotten hurt, really scary situation. And it was on Xavier Howard. So it was like, oh man, T. Higgins is good at football. But I'll tell you why now this one felt a little better because about 30 minutes before Thursday Night Football kickoff tonight, I made a trade. I made a trade in our fantasy football league. And I listened to my own thoughts and maths and feelings from Tuesday's episode where I just ranted about how McCaffrey has been ruined for fantasy football because of Baker Mayfield. And I said, only if Sam Darnold comes back and starts will he end up being actually better than and back to where he should be.
Yeah.
And I thought about it for a few days. And I realized Matt Rule is stupid. And he's not going to do the right thing and start Sam Darnold. So my outlook for Christian McCaffrey for the rest of the season so far is pretty low. I could be very wrong. He could just have gotten to a slow start. They could figure stuff out. For McCaffrey owners out there, I hope I am wrong. But I went ahead and traded Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk for my must start, T. Higgins, RB3 on the season, James Robinson.
Ooh.
And a little suspended guy, DeAndre Hopkins, just in case something pans out there. So got a decent haul for my number 3 overall pick. It was a terrifying trade to make. But looking back at it now, 1 for 1 on this trade because 25.4 points. T. Higgins looked awesome, looked like the best receiver out there, was the best receiver out there. Maybe besides Tyreek Hill, but best receiver for the Bengals for sure. Just want to remind everybody, T. Higgins was my wide receiver, is my preseason wide receiver 9. So I had him top 10, a little higher than most people did there. And he's looking like a beast.
Fantastic.
He is killing.
Better. I don't want to jump ahead, but better than Jamar Chase, I'd say, for this season.
I think he ends up better than Jamar Chase this season. Jamar had a great week 1 breakout. Go figure, that was after T. Higgins had left the game with an injury, did not return. Yeah, I think T. Higgins is going to be the man. I think T. Higgins is the man for Joe Burrow. So those were our must starts. We got a little risky though with our risky starts, Wes. Dolphins defense, risky start for you. Yeah,
okay. So obviously, as we continue to talk about this game, anything that was bad for the Dolphins, we of course in the real world are upset about, but we're talking about fantasy, and I nailed it. And this was a saying: Dolphins looked good. past few weeks, except for first 2 quarters against the Ravens, they just stopped Josh Allen. Anyone who's thinking about the Bengals offensive line, they were looking more like themselves, looking more like the AFC champions coming out of New York against the Jets. And that was my concern. And sure enough, Dolphins defense finished with 0 points.
0 points.
1 sack.
Yeah.
That's it. So tough break for Dolphins. I think 2 reasons. One, they were exhausted from withstanding the Bills. And they're probably just, I think, demoralized after losing Tua. So I think that also just contributed to it as well. 27 points. You said Joey B was a risky play.
Yeah. I think
Pretty
he
decent
was.
outlook.
I think he was. Yeah, it was a risky play for sure. I think, I had said this Bengals team has had 2 rough games first 2 weeks. And then they had a good game against the Jets, and I didn't want to, instill full confidence for Joe Burrow owners to lock him back into lineups there. So wanted to temper expectations with that risky start, but 20.08 fantasy points, 20 for 31, 287 yards and 2 touchdowns. Decent day. If you started Joe Burrow, really, never going to complain about a 20-point day from a quarterback that you could take, that late in drafts, really. I think your worries for Joe Burrow that you had in week 1 when he threw 4 interceptions and had a fumble. I think those are gone. I think Joe Burrow, you can confidently keep in lineups. I think he is a guy you can rely on at the quarterback position in fantasy. You won't be losing your weeks because of Joe Burrow. I think it's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, the tide has changed. He's more of himself now.
Definitely. Got bailed out a little bit there at the end by Joe Mixon not scoring on a first and second down goal line rushes. Dolphins defense held them there on first and second down, but they ended up getting a third down touchdown that Joe Burrow threw to Hayden Hurst, little 2-yard pass right there at the end. So get you an extra 4 points there. Otherwise, we're looking at just about just about like a 15 yards and change, actually like 16 points exactly, more or less. If he doesn't score that touchdown there, if Joe Mixon scores those on those runs, but all good there. And then there are some guys that we told you just don't start them. Don't start them on Thursday Night Football. Don't start them in Cincinnati. Don't start them Miami Dolphins against Cincinnati Bengals. Don't do it. And we were pretty right. We're pretty much right on this.
I'd say so.
Chase Edmonds had 10 points. And that was a generous 12 points or 10 points because that could have been bad. You could have been looking at about a 3 or 4 point game from Chase Edmonds, right, Wes?
I think he got bailed out from that. I also think the game script changed because that was Teddy Bridgewater throwing that pass. But what intrigues me is Chase Edmonds had 5 carries for 6 yards. No, that's not. I don't want to start that guy. But then freaking Raheem Mostert had 15 carries.
The dream, bro.
69 yards. He had exactly the same amount of points, except 0.1 point more.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if there's a better upside to not start, but I don't know if Raheem Mostert is going to be more involved after what he did. I mean, he had a fantastic breakaway run up the middle.
Yeah.
But either way, Chase Edmonds, if you started him, even though you went against our advice, okay, you got double digits technically.
Yeah,
but
you probably played him as a flex play.
He certainly didn't win because of it.
Yeah, definitely. And then my don't start was Tyler Boyd, who finished 3rd in fantasy points amongst the wide receivers. Really got bailed out by a really long catch that he had in like the 4th quarter. So you're grateful for that, but he definitely was not the 20 fantasy point guy that you saw last week. And, I think you're going to have those spikes sometimes from him, but don't count on it. And I still probably would not be starting him.
And don't read into his pass. Don't read into his one pass to Jamar Chase. You're not going to get touchdowns from that.
But there's extra. No, it's not a thing you need to be focused on right there. I have a little concern, Wes. I
Okay,
think.
let me hear it.
Well, Tua Tagovailoa got hurt in the game. And up to that point, Jalen Waddle had seen 3 targets in the game so far.
Yeah.
And after that, he only saw 5 targets total tonight, but he only saw 2 targets in about 2.5 quarters from Teddy Bridgewater. And for a guy of that talent level to get just 5.9 fantasy points, I think I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next week against the Jets, because both these guys, both Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, if Teddy Bridgewater is taking over in the long term for the season, Jalen Waddle may not be the guy that he has been so far. I think Teddy probably relies on Tyreek a
Yeah.
lot. But again, Jalen Waddle and Tua have had this rapport. They've been playing playing football with each other for many, many years now. And so I think we could see, Jalen Waddle could end up, he needs to get a couple first team snaps in with Teddy Bridgewater and could be okay. And by no means am I saying you need to be benching Jalen Waddle or anything like that, or looking to trade him or anything. But if the inconsistency continues and he has, a couple good games in a row, I think you could look at probably selling high here. But we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. We're going to have to wait and see what happens for sure.
I agree. I think as we saw, especially with that long 64-yard pass to Tyreek Hill near the goal line, I think Tyreek Hill is fine with Teddy Bridgewater. But I will remind people that Teddy Bridgewater contributed to half of Michael Thomas's record-breaking reception season 2019. Teddy Bridgewater was a starter with the Saints. So when Teddy Bridgewater finds a guy, he finds a guy clearly. So I hear exactly what you're saying, is that Tyreek Hill, 14 targets, 10 catches. I mean, obviously some of that was from Tua because they were hyping up Tyreek against Eli Apple. And Jalen Waddle, 5 targets, 2 catches. It's very possible that it just shifts completely to Tyreek when Teddy Bridgewater is under center. So I'm with you. We'll just find out to see what Tua's status looks like, if that affects Jalen Waddle owners going forward. But I don't want Jalen Waddle to be an up and down boomer bust player, but who knows?
Yeah, may end up getting there if we do reach that point. But just a couple other guys here. We mentioned a little bit, but Jamar Chase, just 12.1 points. He has yet to break the 13-point mark since his week 1 boom. I think T. Higgins might be Joe Burrow's guy. I think it might be the case. I think I was super high on T. Higgins, super high on him going into the season. I'm very glad I have him now. He was falling heavily in our draft and made a trade to go ahead and get him here now after week 3. Started out fantasy a little bit rough this year, so I had to make a big change. But I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what happens there with T. Higgins. I don't think you try and trade Jamar Chase, but I think we're going to see, Jamar Chase started hot, and then the middle of last year, he was kind of, riding this wave of, I don't know. And then he got really hot at the end of the season. So it's going to be rough. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm not sure exactly what things are going to look like for Jamar Chase in this Bengals offense going forward.
I think that the Bengals offense is starting to pick up some rhythm. So I'm not quite panicking yet. I've been concerned though, but I wouldn't say I don't know. The future looks much brighter for the Bengals now. So I think it's okay. And you can give it one more week and then try to make a decision from there.
Yeah, 100%. Last guy here we'll talk about is Joe Mixon. Finally got into the end zone this season. 17.4 fantasy points, really solid week. He was one of my guys that I thought was going to just absolutely kill it last week, and then didn't at all. Was terrible. But it was awesome to see him go ahead, get in the end zone. He still isn't super efficient. This Bengals O-line, maybe just especially running, I don't know. I mean, 24 carries, just 61 yards. I mean, it's just barely over 4 yards a carry, which, I mean, I guess you don't turn your nose up at, but coming into the game, he was still only averaging like 3 yards per carry, which isn't what you really want to see, but he is getting the heavy workload. He had 24 carries. He also had 4 targets. So 28 opportunities in this game. Can't complain about a guy who's getting nearly 30 chances to score you fantasy points, in a game. So.
And I will say, he looked good when he was running the ball. He just didn't get yards, which is a weird.
Yeah.
First quarter, he looked solid.
Yeah.
It took
their first drive,
defenders
honestly,
to take him down.
Yeah. Their first drive, honestly, I was like, oh man, I think Joe Mixon's back. And then it was like, oh, you're moving okay. It's just, you're not gaining yardage. Like, I'm not entirely sure what to do there, but Joe Mixon owners definitely happy to get that output from him on Thursday night. That is going to do it for this high-powered primetime recap. Could have been more high-powered, had some things not happen, but definitely was something that we were excited about coming into. And I think we still got a pretty good game, even though, situations and circumstances definitely changed up a little bit. It was definitely one of the more exciting primetime games, I will say that.
Well, I said it, Dolphins Bengals, and they play. It comes down the wire. So
yeah, good
games.
Good games for
good
sure.
Good game.
GG's in the chat. Way to go. Let's go ahead and move on here, though, Wes, and let's help out these fourth and trollers. We're gonna go over some stardoms and sit-ems.
Love helping them.
Yeah, I do too, Wes. Let's do stardom sit-em. Who do you have? We're gonna give you guys 2 starts and 2 sits each. So we're gonna talk about 8 players in this segment. But Wes, who is your first start for this week?
Yeah, and let's start out with the aforementioned Julio Jones. It's just, we're on the fence. Some of these guys, there's no one I'm going to talk about with our stardom sit. These are guys that could be flex plays, come off injuries. Is it worth starting? I say, yeah, start Julio Jones, because good night, this Bucs offense has been sluggish. Yeah. And fortunately, for their record's sake, they have an incredible defense. Now, the good news for the Bucs offense is I think they have the most justifiable excuse out of any offense for the season so far.
Right.
That they have literally had so many injuries. They've had a suspension. I mean, everything has just been a rough start for the Bucs offense, and yet they're still winning 2-1. Now, if what Todd Bowles says is true, that Julio Jones could have played in week 3, they just set him out as a precaution, and he's going to suit up, you can bet your sweet Bippy that Brady's going to target Julio Jones. He's going to go after a veteran. I don't know if any of you fourth and trollers have watched these Bucs games, but they be dropping balls, yo. These wide receivers are clearly not the number 1 in the depth chart for a reason. They are making mistakes. And Brady, as we've already seen it, he gets mad. So even though Mike Evans is back, I think Julio Jones, you can start him. If you are on the fence, you don't have someone that you feel quite comfortable yet with starting, or someone that's maybe boom or bust, I think you can start him. And you can start Julio Jones, might get a touchdown, might get a long catch as he did in week 1 against the Cowboys. Ship it. Ship Julio Jones. That's what I say.
I like it. Yeah. No, I was going to ask you if Julio wasn't going to play, what's going to be the over-under on Microsoft Surface tablets broken on the sideline on
100%.
Sunday? 100%.
Yeah, 100% Brady breaks it.
Yeah, definitely. No. I think it was really funny you saying in the news segment, Todd Bowles coming out and saying, Julio could have played week 3, which is precautionary. Yeah, I'm sure Tom would have loved if Julio was playing week 3, because that would have definitely, gotten him a win. But, in a game that close, definitely would have helped out there. But I like Julio this week. I think Julio, especially if Godwin is not playing, we saw, the flashes in week 1 against Dallas. Julio got some great targets there. And I think he is in store for a decent target share if it's just him and Evans playing, which it sounds like it is going to be.
Should be.
Up against his Kansas City defense, who it's going to be a high-scoring game. Or at least we're hoping for it. That's the hope. But sounds like Tampa and TB12 will definitely have to be throwing the football a little bit on Sunday. I like it. I like that start. Julio Jones, go ahead and get him in that lineup if you are thinking about it.
Tell me yours.
I'm give you my first start for this week, and it's going to be I'll tell you what. I think my first start for this week's pretty toit. I think it's a pretty toit start. I'm not going to lie to you. My first start for this week is going to be TJ Hawkinson, tight end for the Detroit Lions against the Seattle Seahawks. Detroit is potentially going to be without DeAndre Swift, is what it's sounding like, who's a decent contributor in the passing attack. Scored a passing touchdown last week. And then who else am I thinking of? Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's the other guy I'm thinking of. Missed practice on Wednesday and Thursday. So the passing attack is going to be down a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I like Josh Reynolds. I like DJ Chark. I like those guys a lot, actually. I like Jamal Williams in the passing game. But the Seattle Seahawks are allowing the third most yards to tight ends so far this season. Now, TJ Hawkinson has had a slow start. He's the tight end 12 on the season so far. He was being taken around the tight end 7, 8, or 9 mark. So you're definitely wanting a little bit more from him this year. But after scoring a touchdown last week, he has had at least 7 targets or a touchdown in each game this season. So all that being said, with Amon-Ra St. Brown potentially being out, with DeAndre Swift not being there in the passing game, I think TJ Hawkinson could be in store for a really solid game against a just overall rough Seattle team. We think back to week 1, Russell Wilson was targeting tight ends at a tremendous rate against the Seattle Seahawks defense. He was definitely going to those guys that he can rely on, those checkdowns there. So Jared Goff's been playing well. I like TJ Hawkinson this week. I think you can start him in your lineups.
I think that is one very great practical solution to the injuries in that offense. But I don't want anyone to sleep on Jared Goff's potential. I mean, now, this Lions offense is cooking. And yes, that is because Swift is out there. Jamal Williams has been great. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is unstoppable, except for an injury. That's the only thing that can stop him. So I think that is a very, very solid choice for a stardom, especially for people who have 2 tight ends. If you got Hawkinson, locking him in. Am I right?
Locking him into the lineup. Locking some TJ Hawkinson. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
That was glorious. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Wes, hit me with another start for this week in fantasy, week 4.
You're gonna love this. Cam Akers.
Oh yeah.
Cam Akers. All right.
There it is.
Here's the question. Can you hear me okay? Because I want to hype up you Cam Akers owner. All right. Here's the question. Is Cam Akers going to be a startable fantasy running back? The snap count is trending in the right direction. He scored a touchdown last week. Darrell Henderson had little production to compete against Akers' stats. But can you start him? Well, the answer is yes. Now, I'm under the assumption that you drafted him. I'm talking to trollers now, that you drafted him. Now, let's say you're someone that traded for him, bought him real cheap, yada, yada. Well, you probably have more reliable running backs, and they have more potential, and they probably have a higher ceiling in your roster. But I'm not talking to you right now. I'm talking to the fourth and trollers that drafted Cam Akers. And you're staring at a losing record right now. The tide is turning, okay? The Rams are better when they have Cam Akers. They're better when they have a better rushing game. You saw it last season en route to the Super Bowl. Sean McVay ran the ball aggressively, egregiously, and obnoxiously in the second halves of football games consistently. He trusted the balance. He trusted on his players all around to make plays. Now, the start of the season, we saw it was all Cooper Kupp. He's still fantastic, but they can't win games through him alone. The Bills blew them out. Now, it's the Bills, sure, but the Falcons almost came back and falconed the Rams.
Nice.
But last Sunday, the Rams stuck to the ground game, and they dug the Cardinals in a hole too deep for them to climb out of. So here's what I'm saying. They ran the ball 44% of the time against the Cardinals, and that's just half their calls. That means nearly half their calls were rushes. 12 of those carries were in the hands of Cam Akers. I can give you some more stats. As you know, I'm sure Cam Akers owners are looking at the percentage of the snaps going up, his carries going up. He had 15 carries against the Falcons. Look, don't give up on him just because of that horrible start. They're going in the right direction with him. And I know it's a stingy 49ers defense. I know they got a deep-rooted rivalry, but I'm going to count on you to believe in Cam Akers. Start him. Watch him. He's going to be great. You're going to see it happen this Sunday. Boom.
Whoa. Dude,
Like
that was incredible. That was incredible. Yeah, no, I like it. I like it a lot. I'm a Cam Akers believer. He was part of my buy low. And we were talking about some of our buy lows last week. He is one of my buy lows. I think he is going to see, like you said, the snap share going up. He's getting more carries. I think he has earned, I mean, I don't know if he ever lost the trust of McVay, but he has earned the trust back at the very least from Sean McVay. He is getting the touches in this offense that we like to see, that you were hoping to see when you drafted him. I think those only move forward and go on up from here. I like Cam Akers to start this week against the San Francisco 49ers.
I think is in the right direction. And Daryl Henderson owners, I'm gonna make this claim too. Daryl Henderson owners should be worried.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. I think Cam Akers is here.
Yeah, I think he is. I think Cam Akers is probably going to take over the backfield for sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to hit you with my second and last start for this episode for week 4 before we jump into studs and duds in just a little bit. But my second start for this week, that's right. Break out the aprons. It's Russell Wilson.
Oh my gosh. Is he going to cook?
Russell Wilson, quarterback for the Denver Broncos against the Las Vegas Raiders. Listen, Russ is not cooking so far. Russ might be cooking. Russ might be cooking microwave hot dogs. No shame, by the way. Microwave hot dog. I mean, maybe you could air fry the hot dogs. Who knows? But anyways.
Yeah. Remember to cut the hot dog before in the microwave so it doesn't explode. Good tip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Unless you're into that thing. But so far, Russ is not cooking. But I think he could on Sunday. The Raiders' defense is just bad this year. They are allowing the fourth most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill just put up nearly 20 points against them. That's Ryan Tannehill, by the way. That's Ryan Tannehill, by the way. Ryan Tannehill put up nearly 20 points against the Raiders defense. And the leading receiver was Robert Woods. Again, that's nothing against Bobby Trees. It's just observation that Ryan Tannehill put up a solid fantasy day and Robert Woods was his wide receiver 1. Yeah, I think Russ can cook against this Raiders defense. I think the Raiders are definitely struggling to figure out kind of what they're doing this year. And I think this is probably a little bit of like a get-right game for this Broncos offense. I think besides Cortland Sutton, it's been struggling a lot. But with the arsenal of players that they have, Javonte Williams out of the backfield, Melvin Gordon even getting, a rushing touchdown last week. Cortland Sutton's been awesome. Albert O has been serviceable, and Jerry Jeudy is going to be 2 weeks now removed from that injury, that chest injury he sustained, so should be back to a better spot this week against the Raiders. I like Russ to have probably his best game of the season so far this week in Las Vegas.
I pray to God you're right.
Me too,
because
man.
It's boring watching them, and it's frustrating because they have such good talent in that offense. And this has to be a get-right game against a surprisingly abysmal Raiders team.
Yeah.
They have to. I think you have to start him. If it's not now, it may be never.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think right now you're starting Russ with confidence, even though it's been a rough start. It's been a rough start for sure, but I think this week could be a week that you are going to be excited to have him in your fantasy football lineups.
Sick.
Wes, let's talk about some guys that we're not going near, that we're sitting down on our bench, even though, you might not want to, but I think you need to. Go ahead and hit us with your first sit for the week.
Well, it's great. You segued it great for me because I'm going to say don't start Robert Woods. I think any of you who saw that he had 9 targets, 4 catches, a slow start for the Titans offense, and you're wondering if this is the guy. There's been some talks about the training camp preseason reports of their chemistry with Robert Woods and Ryan Tannehill. No, it's Titans offense is not producing much. Derrick Henry finally just had a good game. Yeah. And even that, I think you and I know are still like, okay, I kind of need to see that again because this is not the team. So listen, I'm not saying drop Robert Woods, but short and sweet. No need to start Bobby Trees. Did that rhyme? Did I just kind of rhyme? That's kind of nice.
Sweet and trees? I don't think so, but
it's one of those vowel rhymes.
Sure.
Just, kind of, whatever. Anyway, all I'm saying is, like Robert Woods is not, he may have been the wide receiver one, but he should not be in your starting lineup.
Yeah, I agree. I think we definitely just saw that we're going up against the Colts this week. For a game where, Juju just saw shy of 14 points last week, the Chiefs playing them, Colts getting the upset. Yeah, I'm not really going near Robert Woods. Sorry. If you're considering it because you think he's arrived, I don't think he has. And I think you should probably stay away.
Fair enough. Thanks for agreeing with me. I appreciate that. Let me hear your first sit-em for week 4.
Yeah, no problem. My first sit for this week is going to be Trevor Lawrence, quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Going up against the Philadelphia Eagles this week. He's coming off a great game, his best game of the season, 25.2 fantasy points from a guy who was fairly well undrafted in fantasy drafts. He looked awesome. He was spreading the ball around. He was utilizing his weapons. He looked great. It's not going to be the case this week, though. Eagles are allowing the 6th fewest points to quarterbacks this year, accumulating 4 interceptions on that defense in his 3-game span.
Are those all Kirk Cousins?
The 3 of them were. 3 of them were, yeah. But, I mean, Carson Wentz looked terrible last week against the Eagles defense. True. Carson's gotten a lot of garbage time points in fantasy and a lot of garbage time production. There wasn't even anything there. So even though Trevor Lawrence had a great week last week, I do not see that continuing. I think he's best to be left on benches this week. I think there are better streaming options for you, though I do think better days are coming for Trevor Lawrence. I do think he, by the end of the season, could be in that, maybe the top 15 range as far as fantasy quarterbacks goes, and can definitely be a name that's brought up in streaming conversations for quarterbacks throughout the rest of the season. But that is my first sit for this week. Wes, who is your second sit for this week?
Well, I just want to comment real quickly. I'm glad that you also agree there's better days for Trevor Lawrence because he's the QB I picked up to replace Tua in the meantime in my leagues. And I think this offense looks good, but I think with what you're saying about how the Eagles defense and the way that they are against the quarterbacks is worth pointing out. And on that same vein, this is why I'm saying don't start A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. I think going forward, A.J. Dillon is going to be a conditional start based on the rush defense he's up against. He's still the backup to Aaron Jones. I just want to make that clear. Like, it's as great as A.J. Dillon is, he's still RB2 on that depth chart. He's also, though, still seeing 53% of snaps per game. So they're definitely sharing the field. However, Aaron Jones gets first crack at everything. In week 1 versus the Vikings, A.J. Dillon put up 20 points. As we now know, the Vikings have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. They aren't a good defense. Makes sense. Great. And we see this with the Eagles and how they had all kinds of offensive weapons on their side. Jamal Williams dominated them last week. Week 2, the Bears are in the middle of the pack, and it was Aaron Jones because he gets first crack at it. He took that game by storm. Now, week 3, what we saw against the Bucks have the number 1 rush defense in the NFL. And with that, that's why A.J. Dillon walked away with less than 6 points. So for that same reason, it's a conditional start because this week they're going up against the Patriots, and they have the 4th best rush defense in the NFL. So A.J. Dillon is certainly worth keeping. but I think he's going to be conditional. You're going to have to read into the defensive schemes and how they are against the rush, what other running backs have done against them. I don't think you need to, if you have to start him, at least you know you have someone that's talented, but I think you're going to have to read between the lines, figure out the rush defense, and that's why I'm saying this week against the fourth best rush defense in the NFL, do not start A.J. Dillon.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you. I mean, I think I'm a little more optimistic on him just because of the usage, because they're both getting the chances. But you are right that Aaron Jones does get the first crack there. If you're in a situation where you drafted Austin Eckler or maybe Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, where you're, RB1 and 2, and maybe Travis Etienne was your RB3, you might be in a situation where you need to go AJ Dillon. And I don't want you to be scared of that, at least for myself personally. It's coming from me, but I don't want you to be scared of starting AJ Dillon. The talent's there and the opportunity is there. It just does depend on if he gets rolling against some of these better defenses against the run, but not a bad pick there at all for a sit this week. I think there are probably better options for you out there for sure. I'm going to give you my last sit real quick, and then we're going to jump into studs and duds.
Love it.
Listen, I think this might be the quickest sit-em segment or sit-em player we've ever talked about, Wes, because I don't think you're going to have any discussion for this whatsoever.
Okay.
My next sit for this week 4 is DK Metcalf. Any explanation needed?
Nope.
No, we can move on. Anyways, no, I'll give you a little bit. I'll give you a little bit of explanation here. DK Metcalf takes on the Detroit Lions this week. Finally showed up last week. DK did. Got in the end zone. It was a great sign for DK owners. Sadly, that's not going to continue. Jeff Okudah, Detroit Lions number 1 cornerback CB, has been playing awesome for the Lions this season, and I think DK experiences the Okudah wrath this week. DK has under 40 receiving yards in 2 out of his 3 games this season and has not gone over 65 all season. Didn't even break 65 in that one that he went over 40. So he's going to be touchdown dependent, which he has the chance at getting, but set your expectations pretty low just because of the matchup that he's got against Jeff Okudah and the fact that he just is not really becoming that guy for the Seahawks again this year. So he belongs on benches this week, I think. Wes?
No comment. 2 thumbs up. Agree, man.
2 thumbs up. Agree. Awesome. Let's jump into studs and duds. We'll wrap up the show here with studs and duds. Wes, who is going to be your stud for week 4?
Bro. Cooper Rush.
Oh, by the way, guys, that is not Cooper Kupp. That's Cooper Rush. Don't get
That's
confused.
Rush.
I know you hear Cooper and you're like, no duh, Cooper Kupp's going to be a stud this week. If you thought that way, you thought how I did, because when Wes texted me, I was like, really? Cooper Kupp's going to be your stud? And then I had to read it again, and I went, oh my goodness, he's feeling the rush. Tell us why Cooper Rush is a stud this week, Wes.
It's all statistics. You can read into the emotion. You can read about how Jerry Jones is saying that he's open to QB controversy, even though Mike McCarthy is saying, no, we're paying Dak too much to let some backup start. But I think Cooper Rush knows. I only got a couple games left. Now, statistics. Commanders, they're playing against the Commanders, have allowed the 3rd most passing yards this season. That's 871 yards. They have allowed the 3rd most yards per attempt, and they have allowed the most passing touchdowns in the NFL up to week 4. On the flip side, Commanders have a decent rush defense and have allowed only 1 rushing touchdown so far. So if they're going to want to do anything, they're going to keep rolling with this offense. We saw CeeDee Lamb start to pick it up in the game last week. With Cooper Rush's window closing, I expect Cooper Rush to play lights out. And you know what? Studs or duds, we're talking about projections. He's only projected 13.9 points, but he's going to get 3 touchdowns. And he's going to have over 23 fantasy points.
Oh, my gosh.
Let me hear it. Come on.
Wow.
Come on. Cooper Rush, baby. I'm feeling the rush.
Feeling the rush. Feeling the rush. I love it. I love calling your shot there. I think I've been impressed by Cooper Rush's play. 3-0 as a starter. I love that he is He's playing really well. He's playing really well. When
Undefeated.
Dak went down, all these Cowboys fans were like, "Well, season's over," and now they're like, "Oh, I think we're kind of okay right now. What's going on here?" And so,
Yeah.
I love it. I think I like just watching Cooper Rush play football, man. It's awesome to see. I'm excited to see what he can do this week. Who do they play this week?
Commanders.
Right. We just talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I think I'm feeling the rush, baby.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the rush.
He's the red bearded dragon. I'm gonna give him that nickname. Let me hear who's your stud week 3, Noah?
My stud this week, and this may be a bit of hopefulness, but I think that we're gonna see this guy have a great week. My stud for week 4 is going to be wide receiver for the Houston Texans, Brandon Cooks.
Very interesting.
I tell you what, I had high hopes for Brandon Cooks this season. He had a solid week 1, 15-point week 1. I was like, yep, I was right. Book it. Called it. Everyone called me crazy for taking him as my wide receiver 2. Book it. Called it. Yeah, it's been a little rough after week 1. 15 points in week 1, and then in weeks 2 and 3, just 9 and 4 points over the last 2 weeks. Through all of this, though, he still has managed a 27% target share for that Houston Texans offense, 12% higher than anyone else on the team. Brandon Cooks has had, honestly, like really poor touchdown luck this season. He's yet to score, but I think this week he can get back to his old ways of being that really solid wide receiver 2. Texans take on the Chargers, who just allowed 24.5 fantasy points to Zay Jones and then 19.2 fantasy points to Christian Kirk. Arguably, both of those guys aren't as good of a football player as Brandon Cooks. I would say that confidently, in my opinion. Maybe up for discussion after seeing what Christian Kirk has done so far this season. But the Chargers just lost Joey Bosa. J.C. Jackson is dealing with an injury. So I'm looking for Brandon Cooks to soar past this 14.3 point projection this week in a game where the Texans should need to be passing a lot. Brandon Cooks is getting the ball thrown his way. Just had some poor luck as far as getting that to capitalize and turn into fantasy points. But book it. Brandon Cooks, 14.3 point projection. He's blowing past it this week.
14 points for Brandon Cooks is solid. So the fact that you're going to say it's beyond that,
oh yeah,
I think that's kind of cool because you're showing the target share that he's getting because people are looking at Nico Collins and seeing how he's been doing. Dameon Pierce is starting to get more carries.
Rex Burkhead's getting targets to the backfield now.
Forget about it. No. So I would love for that because I think Brandon Cooks has been consistently underappreciated for many years.
Yeah. No, 100%. So I'm excited about Brandon Cooks. Stud for week 4. Book it. Brandon Cooks. Wes, let's talk about some disappointing guys. Who is your dud this week for week 4?
Buckle up because Saquon Barkley's a dud.
Oh, no.
Yeah. All right. I'm calling my shot.
Okay.
I'm taking a chance at the improbable, bro. Okay. I haven't really done some math like this in a while.
Okay.
And I've been wanting to find someone good. All right. Saquon Barkley will have less than 15 points against the Chicago Bears. Less than 15 points. He's projected 19.1. Yeah. No. Okay. So let me look at this here. I wanted to see if there was a correlation between Daniel Jones's performance and Saquon Barkley's performance. How do they do? Does Daniel Jones affect Saquon Barkley? Now, one thing that I noted in looking back, they've only played 11 full games together, which is ridiculous because they've been on the same team for 3 years.
Whoa, yeah.
Because of Saquon's injuries and Daniel Jones's injuries as well. So this is what I have found. Daniel Jones plays better when Saquon plays better. Vice versa. When Saquon is better, when Daniel Jones plays better. Okay. When Saquon goes off for 15 points, this is Daniel Jones's, on average, most statistical best performances with completions, with completion percentages, with yards, with touchdowns, the QB ratings. It's that balance. Good offense, good passing attack, good rushing attack. Now, To me, I think that's interesting, just enough because you would think that a weaker passing game would contribute to a better rushing game. But no, here in New York, they go in tandem. When Daniel Jones is good, Saquon Barkley is good. Now, when Daniel Jones does bad, this is the average that happens when Saquon has less than 15 points. On average, Daniel Jones has 61 completion percentage, 219 yards, 1.8 touchdowns. Okay? 61 completion percentage, 219 yards, 1.8 touchdowns on average when Saquon has less than 15 points. What are the QB statistics against the Chicago Bears? 61 completion percentage, 214 yards, and 1 touchdown. It's almost identical. And for that, it sounds ridiculous, but it's identical. And so for this, I'm making my claim. I'm saying that Daniel Jones is not going to do well, and that means Saquon is not going to do well. Put it together, less than 15 points, Saquon's a dud. Don't at me. Don't at me, dude. He's a dud. Forget about it.
You're a psycho.
Forget it, dude.
You're a psycho. You're a psycho.
Week 4 ruined guy. Disappointment.
We haven't done a friendly wager in a while, Wes, but I am willing to bet the intro to Tuesday's show that Saquon Barkley goes over 15 points this week against Chicago Bears.
I look forward to enjoying the show.
All right, let's see what happens. We'll bet on it. Bet on it.
Great.
Bet. All right.
Bet.
I'm going to tell you a guy who's actually going to go under 15 points this week. And that is going to be Jeff Wilson Jr., running back for the San Francisco 49ers. Listen, I don't actually know if this one needs much analysis, but 14.7 points is absurd for a backup running back who is going up against a Rams defense that is giving up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs this season. Jeff Wilson Jr. has yet to go over 12.5 points so far this season as well. Not to mention, since Elijah Mitchell went down, Deebo Samuel is still getting about 25% of the carries on this team. For a 14.7 point projection for Jeff Wilson against the Rams defense, who pretty much shut down the Bills running back room, and then pretty much shut down James Conner. And then pretty much, who else did they play? Pretty much shut down Cordell Patterson and Tyler Algier, who Cordell Patterson's been balling out. So it wasn't like a one-off for him in week 1. You know, I just don't see Jeff Wilson Jr. doing well against this Rams defense this week. Not to mention also, Deebo Samuel kind of owns the Rams as far as the ground game goes. So in 2 games last year against them, he had 13 carries for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that's as a wide receiver, getting those opportunities. Not much else I need to say about this. I don't think. It's just, I don't like Jeff Wilson this week. So, do the maths. It's not going to be a good week for Jeff Wilson Jr.
I think people like him in San Francisco. I think that he's a good backup, but I'm surprised how different Elijah Mitchell is when you watch him. So I think this, just to throw his name back out into the mix because he's, a few weeks closer to playing again. Jeff Wilson, He's fine. He's passable for this Niners offense, but I think that's fair to say that Jeff Wilson, even though he's a starter, as long as Aaron Donald's on that field, you're not gonna do much.
Yeah, gonna be a dud this week. Jeff Wilson Jr. for sure against the Los Angeles Rams. That is going to be all the time we do have for this episode. Wherever you're listening, we'd appreciate it if you gave this episode 5 stars and write something funny in the review so we can give you a shout out next time. We're on social media everywhere at 4th and Troll and on Facebook at 4th and Troll Fantasy. Look out for our mascot, Teddy the Troll, and make him smile by giving us a follow and joining us next time every Tuesday and Friday. My name is Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And this has been 4th and Troll Fantasy.